because I focus a lot on career acceleration, time is of the essence. I want you to become that best version of yourself as soon as possible, because then it creates this incredible, almost exponential like flywheel effect where everything just starts happening at a much more rapid rate, from income, growth, opportunities headed your way in a very proactive.
Welcome back to R4E, the Reason for Everything podcast. I'm your host, Arjan, and very excited for today's episode. My guest, Tiffany, is you've probably seen her on TikTok or Instagram or your social media of choice, giving some amazing career advice. But Tiffany, I'll give you a second to introduce yourself to my audience, and then I have some questions for you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Arjan, for inviting me. It's great to be on the R4E podcast. And a little bit about myself. So, yes, I'm Tiffany Uman. I am a career strategy coach and workplace expert, where I love empowering high achievers to become the top 1% in your career, whether that's through a career acceleration and promotions, salary raises, new job opportunities, but also in really mastering the workplace with ease and confidence. It gives me a lot of joy to do that. The first chapter of my career was within the corporate space. I worked many years at L'Oreal, where I achieved 7 promotions in under 10 years. And so that didn't come with a lot of learnings and struggles along the way. So I love paying it forward and removing the guesswork in mastering your career and doing it at a very high level of performance and in a way that really accelerates your entire growth track. I'm also a Forbes Coaches Council member, a LinkedIn Learning instructor, a speaker, and author. And I just love being able to share my message through social media, through my programs, and supporting my clients to become the best version of themselves at a top 1%.
An unbelievable resume, and excited to share a little bit more about that here during our conversation today. Now, I mentioned before we started recording how I came across your content in the first place. So we have a very active family Instagram group, and a lot of times it's just me and my mom going back and forth. But that's all my siblings and my dad too. But it's my mom and I who are typically the most active, and she would send us your career advice and career coaching Instagram reels, and that's how I came across your content. It started popping up more and more, and so I was like, I need to get Tiffany on the show and ask her some questions so I can just hear everything I need to know on my show and look back here for any advice moving forward. So really appreciative of you coming on today and excited for our conversation.
Oh, I love that, Arjan. I love that this is a family affair and that you got my content shared from your family members. How wonderful. I hear those stories a lot, just kind of stumbling across my content. So many of my clients have found me through TikTok or Instagram or LinkedIn. So it's a pretty wonderful space when we're able to just break down geographical boundaries and really meet people where they're at and benefit in that way. And I take a lot of joy and pride in the content that I put out in a way that is very actionable, tangible, bite-sized, so that you don't have to watch hours and hours of content to really thrive in your career. It's really trying to break things down as simply as possible and as effectively as possible so that you can really take it and run with it.
No, it's spot on. And now maybe diving into your story a little bit. So we hear about this all the time, people saying that, the next generation's job doesn't even exist yet. When you were going through undergrad, did you have any idea you were going to be a quasi social media, or you could call it a social media influencer?
Oh my gosh, no. I just had a few recent engagements at universities in the Montreal area. That's where I'm from. And it came up too where, if you even asked me, Arjan, a few years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, if I thought I'd be doing this, I'd be like, there's no way. There's no way. I actually really loved my corporate career. I could have seen myself staying there. I know when we speak to different entrepreneurs, some are like, I don't want to be in corporate. I want to escape corporate. That was never my mentality. I really love the work that I did. Of course, it had its highs and low moments, but generally, I really could have seen continuing that path forward. And I would say there was always this longing inside of me to do something bigger, to make a bigger impact. I love that aspect of my corporate work of really growing and developing my teams. but I come from a marketing background, right? It's not a classical HR recruitment background like we see with a lot of career coaches. And I would say with a lot of confidence, that's my distinguishing factor. The fact that I've lived it, that I've come from the employee side, that I've done the things, that I've landed this numerous amount of promotions and really mastered my way up that so-called corporate ladder, that brings a lot of uniqueness in what I share because it's all been tried, tested, and proven by me first and foremost, by my teams, and now my clients as well. But I never thought that this would be me. I always loved the idea of being a motivational speaker, of keeping people very positive and motivated and empowered. It's just my nature, it's my personality. So this transition into coaching actually felt very natural for me, right? The idea to be able to share things that I know well, that are areas of expertise, and help others do it in a way that is very empathic, that is very relatable, that is very actionable. That's always been my guiding light from the beginning. But it has been a very unexpected journey into entrepreneurship, one that I would never have anticipated looking back at my 21 or 22-year-old self.
Certainly. And now, did you have a standalone career coach or mentor in your time at L'Oreal or even before that? Or were you the type of person that kind of just gravitated to different leaders and mentors in your career at given times, or was there a set person?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I didn't actually have a personal career coach. It's something I wish I would have had. And that's why I love being that person for others at this phase of my career and their career as well. I did have mentors though, and I really echo mentorship. I tell my clients this all the time, and I even have my own group mentorship program called Inevitable Success, because when it comes to mentorship, as much as it's important to have those resources, people that might be a few steps ahead or even several steps ahead, but that you can really look up to and learn from in your internal organization, sometimes externally, there's always a little bit of a bias there because they're still looking out for their own interests as a first starting point, right? So with my mentorship program, I really love it because it brings this objective lens where nothing is off limits. You don't have to worry about who's this going to get back to, or what if I'm talking to so and so and then it ends up back with my boss because we're kind of talking about something involved with my boss. So I love bringing that lens as well, but I highly recommend that everyone should have not just one mentor, but multiple mentors in your career. And coaching is really going to take things to that next level because unlike mentorship, coaching really has your vested interest to succeed as a top priority, right? That is my goal as a coach, where you can be as selfish with me as you need. You could talk about yourself all day long. That's the goal, so that I understand you better and can really help you maximize your path for accelerated success.
It's spot on. And I wanted to ask that question. Two guests ago mentioned that he doesn't believe in mentors and he thinks you need to just kind of grind through it yourself. And then once you get to your goal, then, share your opinions and thoughts with other people and allow for feedback at that point. The guest after him before you mentioned that, he's very pro mentorship. You need to go and seek out the person who is in the spot that you want to be in and ask for their advice, ask for their input. So this is an interesting bit of middle ground here, but
Yeah.
spot on the coaching, especially it's almost like a fiduciary in finance. You have someone that comes in and gives you an unbiased opinion and is going to really help you, with your financial goals in that instance, or in your life and career goals in your situation where they don't really have that kind of any level of bias in that decision making process.
Yeah, 100%. And those are really interesting perspectives, and everyone's entitled to have their own viewpoint. I would definitely fall in the camp of pro mentorship because the way I see it, if you could have someone who's already walked the walk that you're considering and can help remove some of that guesswork, remove some of the struggle, remove some of the frustration, and by the way, remove the lost time of you figuring it out. I mean, you could totally do it on your own. Everyone can do it on their own, but what's the cost of that? Right? The cost is time
Yeah.
that you can never get back. And because I focus a lot on career acceleration, time is of the essence. I want you to become that best version of yourself as soon as possible because then it creates this incredible, almost exponential like flywheel effect where everything just starts happening at a much more rapid rate, from income, growth, opportunities headed your way in a very proactive manner. And that is very hard to do without mentorship and coaching, right? I think it's also just to be able to put your ego aside and recognize that asking for help is not a bad thing. Like, it's needed. right? And I think that's a bit of the mindset piece that comes into seeking help from others instead of feeling like you have to find all the answers yourself. That's a lot of pressure to put on your shoulders to feel like, well, I'm going to just do it myself and wait as long as it takes to figure that out. You'll probably be waiting a long time. So I would definitely encourage to seek out those resources, whether through, free content or free resources that are available for you, or also going more of that paid route to get even a hyper customized route that will help you in your distinct journey.
No, it's so interesting you share that. And David Meltzer, who I had on the show, he talks about the dummy tax, and he says, "Hey, I already paid the dummy tax. Let me give you all the information that I learned from that, and then you can accelerate your career, or your life, or your mission even that much further because I've already paid it myself." And I love that 2 cents, and
Yeah.
it's exactly what you're getting to
Dummy
there as well.
tax. That is so good. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's often like that cost of ignorance, Playing the naive card doesn't normally serve you very well when it comes to career pathing and acceleration because someone else will have figured it out before you and then you're just kind of left on the sidelines struggling and wondering, "Hey, why has that not happened for me yet?" Well, that's probably why it didn't happen because you didn't leverage relationship building and networking and putting yourself out there in a way that would have helped give you a lot of those answers a lot sooner.
Yeah, asking for help is a recurring theme on this show. It's something that I myself am trying to get better at, and I think there's so much value to that. To that end, though, I mean, for someone in your shoes now, do you have someone that you're leveraging as a mentor or a coach, given where you are in this journey of entrepreneurship now? Because it's very different than climbing the corporate ladder, going through 7 promotions in 9 years. It's kind of hard. I
Mhm.
mean, this whole social media influencer content creation world is very different. Do you have someone that you're leveraging or reaching out to try to
Oh,
help you
yeah.
in your journey, or how does that work for you now as an entrepreneur?
Definitely. I mean, I'm a big advocate of investing in myself. And so I've seen that with every investment I've made in myself in the business, it's come back, exponentially in the results. And so pretty much from a very, very early stage of starting my business, I've invested in something. I've invested in programs that help me build my business from the ground up. I've invested in coaches that have helped me in specific opportunity areas of my business. I recently worked with Kelly Roach, one of my more recent coaches and mentors, and her team in really scaling the business further. And so the way I always see it is if there's someone out there that I feel kind of does what I need to do and they've already done it, I want to learn from them because I'm going to for sure have question marks and gaps that I'm not able to answer myself. I'm also really fortunate, Arjan, to have a network that I've established that's very supportive. So I have a network of fellow career coaches that I'm in touch with regularly and are able to support one another in our immediate space. I have an incredibly supportive husband who's an entrepreneur as well, and whose business was recently acquired last year. And he comes more from a product based business, but is very complementary to the type of business that I have. So, just under our one roof, I feel like I have an incredible support from him and a different lens of how I view things, how I view building a business instead of staying stuck in the business and the day to day grind of it. But I find it so important to have that network, whether it's someone you're actively working with in a program or some type of investment container, or just people that you can really lean on and have very relevant guidance with what you're looking to achieve. Like that for me is an absolute must.
Now, let me ask you this in terms of your entrepreneurial timeline. In my desktop research ahead of this conversation, you started your business in April of 2020, if I did my homework correctly. Not a very popular time to be starting a business. Can you walk me through what that was like, what that decision-making process was to get to that
Yeah.
point, and how that came to be?
Yeah, I know. It just so happened to be that timing. I actually technically started it in about early March, like late February, early March of 2020, because that's when a lot of my planning of it was coming out. But we officially launched in April when it comes to social media and building there. And back in February 2020, so this was just kind of prior COVID, prior pandemic, I had this urge to really bet on myself and give this a real go. I was technically at that point on my maternity leave with my second child, and I knew I'd have some time at home to do something. And so, compared to my first maternity leave, that was more of a classical leave, I would say this one was very much grinding. I used every moment in the day that I could scrounge up despite being sleep deprived and not really having much routine to put into this. And it so happened to coincide with the starting of the pandemic. And it actually was a little bit of a blessing in disguise because there was a lot of people, a lot of professionals needing support in this time, a lot of change, a lot of uncertainty. And because I chose to build my business virtually, it allowed me to get in touch with people from all around the world, not necessarily have to be in a physical setting to do that. And when I started the business, it was focused more on young professionals, more between like year one and year six, seven into their career. And that's where a lot of that support is lacking, just in general, where you don't learn a lot of the things that you really need to know. And so layer that on with uncertainty and layoffs and restructuring, and suddenly shifting to work from home settings where it's like, how do I even get exposure? How do I get recognized? How do I, have these relationships? There was a lot of that guesswork that I'm like, bring it on. Like, this is my jam. I love this. I'm going to help you. And so I really leaned into it as an opportunity to help and serve. That's always been my mission, Arjan, from the beginning, is to serve people and help them be the best they can in their career as operating at top 1% level. And so for me, this was just an opportunity to do that, where there would be more influx of people struggling, having challenges, and not wanting them to feel alone in that. That was really where it came from. And so, to my pleasant surprise, I would say, like, I exceeded my financial goal I had set for myself in the business in that first year, probably because in many ways that the pandemic was bringing more awareness around coaching and support and knowing that you don't have to struggle through that on your own. And then things just kind of really snowballed from there and gained a lot more traction, a lot more visibility, and building it into the seven-figure business that it is today. So it's been an incredible journey. But I'm really, in a way, grateful in how it started. I wouldn't have wanted it to go any other way because I think that's what gave me the confidence to really go for it and know that people were in need and have it naturally progress in the way that it has since then.
That's true. Well, first of all, congratulations for, you know, the courage it takes to, take that. I always talk about that leap of faith to start something like you have and to get to where you are with a lot of uncertainty on the other side of that. So, like I said, first of all, congratulations. And then secondly, I love the story of hidden blessings. And that's part of the ethos of this show is reasons for everything and random gut feelings that you follow that intuition to get you to where you are. And this is a perfect example of doing that. And in that timeline, at what point did you come back from maternity leave to L'Oreal at all, or were you done at that point, or what was that process like for you?
Yeah. So that first year of 2020, I was essentially home. We're thankful and grateful to have that in Canada where it's essentially a year-long maternity leave. And I had gone
Oh
on the
wow.
maternity leave in November of 2019. That's when I gave birth to my daughter. And so I started the business a few months after, again, with no real expectation. It was like, hey, let's just see how this goes. And I wanted to give myself that year of runway to see if it would have enough traction to stand on its own without me needing to necessarily work full time and have this as a side hustle. And so, come January 2021, this is where I made the very bittersweet decision of going all in on the business, due to honestly primarily personal reasons at that point. That's almost what led to the decision because I had, compromised family members with different illnesses, and with COVID still very much alive. I knew I had to keep my kids at home. I wouldn't be able to send them into a school setting anytime soon. I'd be homeschooling them. And my work environment was one that I knew would have a certain level of standard and delivery that would be required. And I'm not the type of person to go at something at 50%. So I'm like, if I'm not able to show up fully in the way that they'll need me to, I don't feel like that's fair to them. I don't feel that that's fair to me. And I also don't feel that that's fair of what it would do to this business that was blossoming and the momentum that was building at that time. And so, although it was a very difficult decision, because like I said, I loved my corporate career, I kind of came at it from a lens of, hey, it will always be there. If I end up changing my mind, if things shift, I can always go back, but I'm not always going to be able to come back to this. Like, the time is now, and who am I to cut myself off at the legs and just stunt the growth that can otherwise happen here. And especially in the way that it was helping people. I never thought that I would be able to have such a positive impact, not just on the careers, but the lives of my clients, and having them tell me, Tiffany, you literally changed my life. That's really something hard to walk away from. And as much as I love my work in marketing and everything that was entailed with that, there was just a very different why that I was uncovering for myself in the work that I was doing as a career coach. And so it felt like the right moment to do it, even though it was a very difficult decision. I knew from a personal standpoint and also from a professional standpoint that it was the right move. And I have no regrets. I'm so happy that I did that and made that choice.
And it's interesting you mentioned at the start of the business, it was really the folks in years 1 through 6, 7 of their career that were leaning into your, advice and mentorship. And I find it interesting. I've talked about this on my show a couple of times, but so I graduated undergrad in 2019. So I had about 7-8 months of normal traditional office work until before the pandemic hit. And at that point, and that cohort of kids that graduated in 2019 is the last group. Obviously, some of the folks in 20 and 2021 graduating years had internships where they experienced the more traditional work environment. But I feel so fortunate that I was able to kind of see what that old school pre-pandemic, probably will never be at that capacity again in the office environment before the pandemic happened. And I totally resonate with a lot of the individuals that are who had graduated after me, who were working from home, trying to figure out how to, make friends with your colleagues and how to make yourself known in front of your superiors at work.
Yeah.
And to your point, it's like this perfect confluence of timing and offering that you had. It was a perfect product market fit. That was a little bit of a coincidence, and also a lot of hard work by your end, or on your end, along the way to get you where you are. But pretty crazy to see how that kind of bubbled up for you.
Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing that, Arjan, because honestly, just starting in the workplace is overwhelming enough, right? Like
Right.
shifting from school to work setting, it's a huge learning curve, right? There's a lot of things that we don't learn how to do, but are really needed to set you up for the most success. And then layer on remote work where you're kind of on your own and the accountability is in the space of your own home. It's a very different dynamic. And so we definitely focused on that a lot at the beginning of how to still elevate yourself and get that recognition and exposure and drive accelerated results despite the shift in working environment. And I'd say over time, things just really evolved where I started to see more and more people getting very interested in the content and the way I was sharing different topics online, that moved well beyond young professionals and moved into mid-stage professionals, somewhat senior stage professionals. I work even one-to-one with very senior level professionals. And so it really was a great validation for me in seeing that these topics really stand the test of time and can be adapted in so many different ways depending on where you're at, the type of functioning you're in, the role that you have, the level of seniority that you hold. But regardless, the common denominator across the board is that they are essential. And I really love focusing on those types of topics, whether it's around confidence, mindset, personal branding, relationship building, stakeholder management, team management, communication, conflict management, work-life balance, career progression, salary negotiation, interviews, advocating for yourself. Like the list goes on, but they're just so instrumental in taking full control of your career. And then that's what I'm all about.
And now, at what point did your social media presence start to overlap, or I guess build with the business actually starting? Was it from the jump, or how did that process look for you?
No. No, and I can say, if anyone is listening to this and is in starting stages of a business or using social media, don't get discouraged. Like I could have gotten discouraged a lot because it was a very slow build. I used primarily Instagram at the start. I wanted to really master one platform before going on multiple platforms. And it was very slow. I think it took me a while to get to 1,000 followers. And then it took me another quite a long while to get to 10,000 followers. And it was easy to kind of fall into that bucket of looking at vanity metrics of likes and comments and realizing, oh gosh, like, is what I'm sharing not necessarily landing? What I've come to learn since then is a lot of the clients that I do work with never even necessarily engage on content. They're kind of behind the scenes, they're consuming, but they're not necessarily ones on the front line. So I think that was an important realization, that people are watching, even if you don't see them watching. They're there. They're intaking it. The second thing was, it was actually in the beginning of 2022 that my growth really started to take off on Instagram and also on TikTok. I started on TikTok towards like mid 2021, and it was building, and that started building quite quickly for me. But I would say from Instagram standpoint, that really started to building closer to the beginning of 2022, where we started getting significant jumps with some of the content landing even better, resonating better, where we grew, 30, 40, 50,000 followers like within a span of a few short months. And that had never happened before. And even this year growing, upwards of 30 to 40,000 followers in a short amount of time. It starts to kind of have this snowballing effect. Even with LinkedIn, another platform that I've become very active on. We've had 3 times growth since the beginning of this year on LinkedIn. I'm a LinkedIn learning instructor as well, as I mentioned at the beginning, and my courses, I'm just blown away by this. I can't believe it, but they've reached over 600,000 learners
Unbelievable. I
across
saw
the
that.
globe, which is like unreal to me, that, these bite-sized nano courses that are free to consume, like under 10 minutes long, are just having the impact that they're having. It really warms my heart to know that, you could put in this effort and people are really benefiting from it. But long story short, I should say, it was a slow build. It was not an overnight success. You can, right? You can always have a viral post that somehow takes off. But for me, that's not what's important here. My mission, it goes back to the very beginning of just serving others and helping. And so even if I have one post that helps one person, for me, that's enough. I don't need it to be in the mounds of thousands and hundreds of thousands. But the fact that it has reached that is just so humbling and really heartwarming that it's helping people in this major way.
What has been the biggest challenge for you as an entrepreneur in your coaching services? Something that maybe you weren't expecting when you were in your corporate job or you didn't see? What's been the biggest hurdle you've had to face?
I mean, there's been quite a few. If there's one hurdle that I'd say from an entrepreneurial standpoint, is really bringing a CEO mindset. Because as a coach, I found it's very easy to get into coach mindset, doing the work, like the actual work with my clients and my programs. But being able to put your CEO hat on and really focus on building the business, building enterprise value, building the machine that runs the machine. That has been a big learning curve for me. Not because I don't have the ability to do it. It's not that. It's more about these cognizant shifts that you have to make in how you run your day to day, and how you run your months, and how you run your year, and how you run your teams, right? And I have a team. We built out a team in the last year. And so it's all these different elements of, okay, it can feel a little uncomfortable because it's like your baby that you're growing here. And you want to make sure that you're focusing your energy in the right places. So I was definitely guilty of that a lot at the beginning, where I think I was too in it and almost was losing sight of like the building aspect. And over the last year and a half, this has been just such a huge focus for me of really rebuilding and building more for more scalability, more visibility, and more expansion overall. So that would, I'd say, be a big challenge, because in corporate, unless it is, let's say, a startup, which can be, and even so, it's not necessarily your own startup. So you're still kind of part of the build, but you're not necessarily initiating the entire building structure of that organization. And that's something that you really need to adopt when you are shifting into entrepreneurship, to make sure you put your time and energy on what makes the biggest difference and in the fastest way possible.
I like what you mentioned there about the CEO had to be the machine that builds the machine.
Yeah, I talk about
Spot
that
on.
a lot with my husband. In the way that he's built his business, it's like it's that machine that builds the machine, right? Especially when it is a service-based business, or if you are the face of the business to some degree, that's not as sustainable, right? If you don't show up one day, you still need the machine to run. And so that's been a big shift of saying, okay, well, what do we need to build to be able to allow for that to happen? Where I'm still a big part of it, obviously, but that there's a little bit more going on behind the scenes to ensure that sustainability factor.
No, let's maybe double click on that for a moment. So, as an entrepreneur, you obviously have a ton of responsibilities. You put your CEO hat on, you have multiple facets of the business that you're running. How are you able to call it decompress, or what does your maybe routine look like? So if you want to unplug for a couple of hours or a day or a weekend or spend time with your kids, what does that look like for you, and how are you able to, call it work-life balance or whatever your word of choice is? What
Mm,
does that look like for you now as a
yeah.
business owner?
Yeah, I'm huge on work-life balance. I mean, that is a non-negotiable for me. It's also, by the way, in my coaching, even for our corporate professionals, it's something that I instilled even in my corporate days. Like, I'm big on the fact that if you can't work yourself, you can't show up as your best in your work, right? So we need to take care of ourselves. We need to prioritize the things that make us happy and that bring a lot of fulfillment in our life. And for me, that's a big part of being with my family. And so the beauty of it is I work hard. When I work, I put in the hours, I get my stuff done, and I set my goals and I follow through on those goals very effectively. But I'm also very, very particular in the hours that I put in the day. So, on a given day, I'm working maybe between, 8:30 to 3:30, and then that's when my day stops. I'm with my kids, I'm getting them from school, we're having dinner together. I don't work at that time. And my team knows that too, where I'm not working in the evenings. I don't work on the weekends. Like, that is precious time for me and my family. And so it's been very conscious in terms of decisions. I also love exercising. So I do that in a moment in the day where I can commit to and be very consistent with myself. But these are things that are important that I respect and I honor. Of course, there's busier times that happen. If, let's say, I'm doing a launch for my business, I know it might get a little bit more demanding, but I think I've established things in a really, really effective way that it doesn't overtake or lead to, burnout or anything that becomes really hard to overcome. I'm very cognizant of the day-to-day management, the time management, the stress management. And ultimately, Arjan, I love what I do. So it like never feels like, oh gosh, I gotta like get to work today. Whenever I'm away on vacation or we're traveling with my family, I'm like, I love it. Like, I can message clients while I'm away here and there if I need to. I could work from anywhere in the world. When I come back, I'm super excited to come back because it's like I've missed it. It's just a very different vibe because you're creating it yourself, right? Whatever stress you have, for me, it's good stress because it's stress that I'm pushing myself, that I'm challenging myself, that I'm breaking a new comfort zone that I've been in, right? So it's all coming from a good place, but that protection of well-being is like of the utmost priority. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to show up with the energy that I show up, with the level of peace of mind that I show up. It just wouldn't be possible.
I resonate with so much of what you said there, and the idea of loving what you do, making it not really feel like work at all is so spot on. It's even if I'm on vacation or on the weekends, but I have something that pops up for the podcast, I want to throw myself at it because it's exciting and it's fun and it's what yeah. So I really resonate with that, and I actually heard a great quote. Do you know who Ryan Sarhant is? The real estate agent, real estate broker.
I've heard of him, yes.
Yeah, I saw a quote yesterday on Instagram Reels or a video, and he was basically saying how uh, the next generation of Gen Z, Gen Alpha, is so good at overlapping. Right now, the current workforce generations are thinking, oh, I got to go work my 9 to 5, and as 5 o'clock hits, I'm done with work, and I have my other side life. And he was saying how Gen Z and Gen Alpha are so good at kind of blending the two, where it's like, oh yeah, like, I am a content
Mm,
creator, that's what I do, or I am a X, Y, and Z, and that's what I do. And it's almost like a work life integration in a lot of ways. And he was basically
yeah,
saying that
it's
they've
so
just kind of
true.
embraced this idea of it. And I totally
Yeah.
resonate with that. And I think that I don't know if the next generation, especially with the, like we talked about earlier, new wave of jobs, are going to face the
Mm.
same sort of work life stressors, work life balance that the current generations do. But that's just my hypothesis.
Yeah, I love that. I guess time will tell. I will say, having any type of business or even just like content creation journey that you do on social media, it is important to create those boundaries of when you're on and when you're off. I know that for me was a challenge at the beginning where a lot of my business was coming through organic. Like, I've grown my business 100% organically from the beginning. I don't do ads. I don't do any paid advertising, nothing. So it's all been organic growth. And through that, having just have a lot on my phone, it's easy to feel like you have to stay on, right? You have to answer that DM. You have to get back to someone. And of course, the beginning when it's only you, it's very easy to fall into that trap. Obviously now, and with the team that I built, not all of that is necessarily falling on my shoulder. So that definitely eases things off. But I think regardless, just when you do love the work that you do, you can be so vested in it and feel like, but it doesn't feel like work. I'm just going to check that. But it's also good to set those boundaries, both for you and the people that you work with, and to lead by example of saying, hey, when I say, you need to shut off, I also shut off, and I'm going to get to this the next day. There's nothing that's so urgent that, has to overtake personal time or family time. And being very strict about that is pretty crucial.
And it's like you said, I mean, if you're not rested and ready for work, it's not fair to you or to anyone that you're serving. So totally
Yeah.
spot on there.
Yeah. 100%.
The other thing that as we're talking about kind of jobs for the next generation, you have two young kids now. Do you have any predictions or thoughts for, what type of careers that they might be walking into after they graduate undergrad in 20 years or so? Like what do you think the future of the workforce is going to look like as you're talking to your young clients? Mind you, they might be some of your youngest clients, but what
Yeah.
are you predicting for the future of the workforce in terms of shifts out of traditional 9 to 5s and what's to come
Hmm.
there?
Oh, yeah. I think it's going to look pretty different than it looks today. Just look at how things look now versus 3 years ago. I think with integration of AI and these incredible capabilities that are coming to life, it's definitely going to shift the way that people show up in workplaces. I don't think there's going to be so much of these classical 9 to 5s, but a little bit like what you were saying, Arjun, this like integration of different ways of working and really living like multi-passionate careers. For me with my kids, I'm very open and supportive. I'm like, whatever you want to do, like we're going to support you. And I think, you told someone 10 years ago, like you could be a YouTuber, they'd be like, what are you talking about? I think there's been so much debunking of career paths that are very legitimate and, can pay incredible amounts of income today that are very possible. I think the internet is bringing so much within our disposal, and social media. I think social media as a whole is going to evolve as well. But I don't think anything is ever truly going to replace that human factor. Like there is something to be said about that connection, craving that is still going to be very intact. Will it always be in physical settings? Maybe not. But I don't see that disappearing. I think that's still going to be something that as human nature we crave and we need to feel that level of belonging and fulfillment in our careers and lives. But in terms of the options, there's probably going to be functions and roles that exist today, but just look very different, right? Maybe with different capabilities that allow them to be more efficient, more automated, the leveraging of AI in that. I think there's just going to be a whole different world of opportunity, which is very exciting for this next generation. There might be even more around really important topics in the world today, whether around making the world more sustainable, with climate and these types of shifts. There's probably going to be a lot of meaningful types of roles that are coming out that are not a nice to have. They're going to be must haves. And so we might see more gravitating in that direction. But I think it's an exciting time that there's just going to be more possibilities than what we see today. And probably things that we can't even imagine today because it's so advanced with where we're at. Even when we think of something like a chat GPT, which I know is all the rave from this past weekend. But all of that, like I don't think anyone could have anticipated like the capabilities that something like this can bring and what things like this will continue to bring in the next 2, 3, 5, 10 years. So I think just get ready, buckle up and lean into it as much as you can.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, time will tell, but it'll be very interesting to see. I feel like we're right at the tip of the, or like seeing right at the tip of the iceberg right now for what's to come, especially with all the generative AI, ChatGPT types of technologies that are around the
Yeah.
corner. But it seems like it's growing and scaling exponentially right now. And to your point, it's all the rage. So we'll see how, by the time even this airs, I'm curious how that whole situation is going to shake out.
Yeah. And I think it still goes a long way about building your own brand as a person. I mean, I focus a lot of this in my coaching around personal branding because that's something that is very distinct to you. So in a world where things are getting automated, things are, very, very highly technical or very advanced in many ways with artificial intelligence, you want to really make your cornerstone in who you are and your thought leadership and your personal brand, whatever that looks like, whether it's in a company setting, an entrepreneurial venture, it doesn't really matter. But that is you, and that is very hard to replicate. So the stronger that that foundation is, the better you're going to be able to hold up no matter what gets thrown your way.
I totally agree. Excuse me. And I also hear, I mean, you see all the fake generated clips of any of these other famous podcasters or newscasters saying random things or promoting random products. There's obviously a lot of downsides to that, but there's also a ton of upside in just creating content like you or I are doing. Our
Yeah.
jobs are hopefully just going to get a lot easier, where I can plug in my hours of footage and you put in your hours of footage into whatever generative AI tool and say, hey, make me clips on this or make me TikToks about this.
Yeah.
So it's just super exciting. It's super, super exciting. And
Yeah.
I feel like, you were ahead of the curve getting on the entrepreneurial journey, especially tying that into the social media world when you did. To that end, tell me about your experience with the Forbes Coaches Council and how that came to be.
Yeah, this has been so much fun, Arjun. I mean, it started a few months back, actually, and this was something that I've had on my vision board. I've wanted to be able to contribute to Forbes in some way. And again, thinking of back to little old me a few years ago when I was initially thinking, do I do this? Do I not do this? And to now see how far things have come, it really blows my mind. But essentially, I applied to become a Forbes Coaches Council member. And I said, you know what? This is the year. Like, well, why wait for another year? Why wait? I have to just bet on myself like I've been doing all this time and go for it. The worst that's going to happen is it'll be a no, and then I could come back to it at a later time. But I, met all their criteria. It was a very quick process in my end. And it's amazing. I've already made 4 major contributions on Forbes in the last month alone. I'm working on my first articles as well that will be fully my own as well. On Forbes, and the community has just been so supportive there from the very beginning of the onboarding to being able to also be amongst these incredible other experts, not just career coaches or anything like that, but all types of coaches within this space. It's really, really remarkable, and they create an amazing community on the inside that you get access to. So I'm excited to see where that continues to go. And again, it just ties to my initial mission of being able to serve others. For me, this is just another incredible globally recognized platform that allows me to get that message out there. And so it's been a lot of fun, and I'm excited to see where it continues to go.
So terrific. So terrific. And now you mentioned vision boarding. I've talked about vision boarding goals. I fully subscribe to the idea of manifestation and visualization and prayer and all that fun stuff. But for
Yeah.
vision boarding for you, is that a physical vision board that you have? What does that look like? And what is that process like for Tiffany?
Yeah. I like visuals. You can't see it right now, Arsham, but I'm looking at the other side of my computer. I actually am big on Post-its. Anyone who follows me probably knows this
I've
well.
seen, yeah.
And I actually have all my clients on Post-its on my wall. For me, this is the most important visualization that I can have for 2 reasons. One, it's a constant reminder of why I do what I do and the people that I'm serving, because I get to see it every day when I work. That is my backdrop. And I think it's also a reminder of what's continuing to stay possible for me. That if I've already done this, imagine what else I can do. So I kind of use it in that way, in manifesting and being bold and building different opportunities. And I think it's helped me a lot because some of my dream goals that I thought would take years to accomplish happened already, right? Like being a Forbes Coaches Council. I didn't think that would happen, and it did. Becoming a LinkedIn learning instructor with hundreds of thousands of learners. Didn't think that would happen so quickly. It did. Being featured on incredible podcasts like this and, other major ones, didn't think that would happen, and it's happened, right? Being able to get recognized in a lot of incredible media outlets, I didn't think that would happen, and it's happening. So there's just so many different facets, both from kind of the external stuff, but also the personal stuff that this has brought to me in my life. And those are the things I'm really grateful for. At the end of the day, I'm a very simple person. Like, it doesn't actually take a lot to get me happy. I'm very intrinsically motivated. That's always been my driving force, even in my corporate days. My happiness comes from within, and it's why I'm able to show up with such a positive energy level in everything that I do. And I want to maintain that. I don't want to get to a point where it becomes so extrinsic focused that it doesn't feel like me, that I don't recognize myself. So I find the things that I manifest and through vision boarding that I know are going to bring me that level of happiness, and where it doesn't feel like I'm chasing things, but more of like, that's something I'm going to do. And what can I already start doing now that's going to help that happen faster? And it's the same methodology, by the way, that I use with my clients when it comes to career acceleration. You don't have to have a goal that's 5 years from now. Why 5 years from now? How do we make that happen sooner? And it's the same type of embodiment that I bring in how I show up in my business, right? Why do I need to wait 3 years for that to happen? What can I already start doing that makes that my reality now? And then really capitalize on that. That's been a big thing for me.
And you mentioned even with the Forbes Coaches Council, you said you applied and you thought, what's the worst that can happen? I've talked about that before. I mean, again, it's like taking that leap of faith and starting your
Yeah.
business or whatever it is. It's
Yeah.
so spot on. And there's another creator that I really enjoy, Sahil Bloom. He always talks about
Oh, yeah.
how closed mouths don't get fed. And it's probably
Exactly.
talk about similar things with your clients too, but I fully
I
subscribe
know.
to that.
I love that. I actually had a pleasure of meeting Sahil back in September at an event that I had attended. And I know I really love his stuff as well. I share it often because it just hits home. I think it's very relatable to a lot of what we experience. And you have to put yourself out there, right? Like, if you don't ask, you don't get. And that's probably one of the worst things someone can do for themselves is just expect things to happen without putting in the effort to help make it happen. And so I'm a big believer in that. It's certainly served me well, and I hope it will continue to serve me well as things evolve.
Couldn't agree more. And as we round out here, you're talking about the goals that you have, the vision board for Tiffany and your business. You've already helped over 500,000 folks on LinkedIn Learning. Probably, definitely going to pass 1 million in 25, if not sooner, or 24. I'm sorry, if not sooner. What's on your
Hmm.
vision board for your business and you personally as we round out 2023 and get into 2024?
Oh yeah. Definitely some big things on my vision board. I would love to do a TEDx. There's been a few talks about that. I want to kind of put the foot to the pedal and do that. That's a big one for me. I have book in the back of my mind. People keep coming to me and saying, you really should do a book. You should do a book. And I did co-write a book back in 2022, but I think there's something different about having your own, really with your own distinct message. And I already have a feel of what that would look like. Whether that's 2024 or beyond, I think it's something that would be really fun to do at one point and really share my message in that way. From a business standpoint as well, I'm definitely building out my portfolio of products. So I have 2 incredible products right now. I have a few more that are actively in the pipeline that is going to help us serve even more people from end to end within their career journey. So I'm really excited of how that's going to build out. There's also some team elements that I'm working on to make sure that we're ready for that next level of growth as well. So those are certainly some things top of mind for me as we head into next year. Really pushing that envelope and making sure that I don't become my own roadblock in any of this.
Super exciting. And for those who want to get in touch with you, figure out how to get involved with Tiffany's coaching services, what's the best way for people to find you on social media or your website? What's the best way to get in
Yeah,
touch?
definitely. Definitely. So there's a few ways. You could definitely go to my website, www.tiffanyuman.com. You'll see all of my services there. You could book a free call with me and my team. That's a great starting point so we can get to know you better and see how we can best support you in your goals. Outside of that, you can also email me, tiffanyuman@tiffanyuman.com. Let us know that you tuned into this episode, what your major takeaways were. And of course, follow me, connect with me on social media, Instagram and TikTok. It's the same handle at tiffany.uman. So feel free to drop me a DM there. You could follow me on LinkedIn as well. Just search my name, Tiffany Uman. I'm the only one, so it'll come up pretty quickly for you. And you could also follow me on YouTube. It's something I've started a little while ago and love to see the support support there as well. We have some exciting new long form videos coming up in the pipeline also. So really excited to build that out further. And if anyone is interested, I also have an incredible free newsletter. It's a weekly newsletter called Peak Performers. You could find it directly on my website as well. We have over 20,000 readers there leveling up with me weekly to become the top 1% in your career. So that's a great starting point as well.
The newsletter is awesome. I fully would encourage anyone to sign up for that if you're listening still. And Tiffany, I'm so appreciative of your time. I'll be sure to plug all of that in the show notes. And I hope you and your family can have a great Thanksgiving.
Oh, thank you so much, Arjan. Same to you. Thank you for having me. I hope everyone found this helpful. And it was a real pleasure to meet you and be on the show.